This industry can be really, really tough. The first brokerage I started working with was in like the traditional model where I was commission only, really had to grind it out, eat what you kill. You build a book of business and maintain a book of business solely based off of relationships. Very much so like the traditional way of doing that. And it is really tough. You have to have grit, you have to have the ability to delay gratification and continue to grind and continue to work, even if a paycheck isn't necessarily rolling in. A lot of new brokers started with a validation schedule. So you had this expectation to perform. And I think a lot of sales organizations tend to lack a lot of the training that is required to be successful. So I took it upon myself, and I think every young salesperson should take it upon themselves to find other outlets for whether it be mentorship or learning, take courses, attend conferences, really bet on yourself and invest in yourself so that you can continue to gain new skills and gain new knowledge and information to again continue to perform better day after day.
Welcome to Benefits Broker Boost, the show that gives employee benefits brokers practical strategies to grow, scale, and streamline their business. Presented by Plansight, where innovation meets efficiency in employee benefits. Now, let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of Benefits Broker Boost. I'm Adam Smith, and I'm joined today by Talia Hansen. Talia, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'm excited for our conversation. The Benefits Broker Boost, the goal is to let brokers who take time out of their day to watch the show walk away with something that they can do tomorrow to better their business. I've had a lot of really experienced producers on here. I've had a lot of marketers on here. There's a big divide between people who get started in the industry and people who become very successful in the industry. Excited to interview you today because you're right in that process, right? You're just a couple of years in, you've already got a Rookie of the Year award under your belt. So you're making that transition. So it's going to be really helpful for people who are just getting started to understand some things that they might do. So again, thanks for being here. We'll just kind of jump right in. I want to start with how you got into the insurance industry. And then we talked beforehand and you talked about mentors and how much they helped you. And so I want to get into kind of how you built those mentorships, who your mentors are, how those came to be, and what they've done for your career. So let's start there.
Yeah, perfect. So I think, like most people, I didn't grow up thinking like, man, I cannot wait till I am an insurance agent. Most of us end up, I think we all say like we fell into the industry in one way or another. I was really fortunate growing up. My grandfather worked in like the property casualty side, so I watched him have a really great career. And I know having had that experience, there was more than like one occasion that I was like, absolutely not for me. I am not going to be an insurance agent. It seemed boring. And like back in the day, there was like a lot of paperwork that I just didn't think was going to like fulfill me in the same way that I wanted to for my career. But he was really a staple in our community. And I really got to witness how his work was like impacting the people that we knew, people that we loved, especially in like a time of turmoil or trouble that they were going through. Usually when somebody's calling their insurance agent, it's not for the greatest of reasons. And when I moved from Montana, where I was born and raised, down to South Georgia, of course, I was applying to a bunch of different jobs, and it kind of came between two different positions, either the property casualty space or I'd been given an opportunity to work in employee benefits. And I felt really drawn to the employee benefits space because it was somewhere that I truly felt needed help. Like there was a lot of room for improvement in the way that the healthcare space is financed and navigated by employers and employees alike. And if I could be involved in changing that in some way, I felt that was going to be really inspirational. Really early on in my career, I was given the opportunity to go to Benefits Pro Broker Expo up in Atlanta. And while I was there, I got connected with a well-known gal, Susan Combs, who's in the industry. She hosts a women's mastermind. It's the Wonder Woman Mastermind. And she was gracious enough to bring me into the fold and allow me the opportunity to sit, learn, listen, and grow with a lot of really powerhouse women in this industry. And while attending some of that, I was connected to Chelsea Rikus of Ethos Benefits. I felt very drawn to her, very inspired by her story, how she got into the industry, and everything she would say on our calls was very empowering, motivational. You could tell she was like driven to change the way that healthcare works in the modern day. And I I like to say one day I decided to shoot my shot and I sent her an email saying, "Hey, Chelsea, I am in awe of you. I think everything you do is incredible. And I would really love the opportunity to kind of learn from you and mentor under you if you are open to a mentor mentee relationship."
Hmm.
I got very lucky and she saw something in me and was willing to take the chance. And she invested a lot of time in me over the last couple of years. And throughout that relationship, again, I kept learning and I kept listening and I kept wanting to grow. And I think that that's a really key thing in this industry is like once you know better, you can do better, and using the knowledge and information that you have to really advance the way that you're performing tomorrow. And as we were working together, the opportunity arose where she had a position opening in her business, and I made the decision to join on board with Ethos Benefits, where I get to do fiduciary benefits consulting, which is very empowering to me, how helping employers navigate a very complicated and opaque structure of health benefits.
That's awesome. So your mentorship literally not only opened a lot of doors with relationships, but literally opened the door to the job that you have now. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's super great. I'm very happy to be here, and I plan to be with Ethos for a very long career.
That's great. So I mentioned, you're kind of spanning that just getting started to successful in the employee benefits space gap right now. Um, Obviously, mentors have played a part in that, but what are some of the other things that you're doing to set yourself apart and move through that gap that a lot of people have a hard time bridging faster?
Yeah, I mean, this industry can be really, really tough. The first brokerage I started working with was in like the traditional model where I was commission only, really had to grind it out, you eat what you kill. You build a book of business and maintain a book of business solely based off of relationships. Very much so like the traditional way of doing that. And it is really tough. You have to have grit, you have to have the ability to delay gratification and continue to grind and continue to work, even if a paycheck isn't necessarily rolling in. A lot of new brokers started with a validation schedule. So you have this expectation to perform. And I think a lot of sales organizations tend to lack a lot of the training that is required to be successful. So I took it upon myself, and I think every young salesperson should take it upon themselves to find other outlets for whether it be mentorship or learning, take courses, attend conferences, really bet on yourself and invest in yourself so that you can continue to gain new skills and gain new knowledge and information to again continue to perform better day after day.
Yeah. Can we get into some specifics there? Like I said, I want someone to walk away with, you know, Talia's had this success early on. She bet on herself. What are some of the like courses or conferences that you attend that have been most impactful for advancing your career?
Yeah, yeah. So Benefits Pro Broker, I've attended a few times, and that is absolutely a phenomenal way to just dive deep into getting to know people, getting to know spaces. I also think that getting involved in organizations that are parallel to this industry is really important. So whether that be SHRM or HRCI or any of like the HR, CFO groups, if you can get involved in an organization. I, for example, am like a member of Rotary where I have the opportunity to network and make additional connections. And then there's tons of great courses. I think a lot of brokers don't take their continuing education credits as seriously as maybe they should, but you're already required to have X amount of hours of knowledge and education. So if you continue to take courses and then actually choose to learn from those courses, there's a lot of advantages there as well. Then the IFEVP, I've taken a couple of their self-funded courses. I think I have 5 certifications through them. I've begun the SEBS certification course, the CEBS certification course with the IFEVP as well. That is a really hefty course. I think there's 5 different sections, 5 different tests that you end up taking. It is a big investment, but it's a really great way to really just dive deep into the nitty gritty. And then staying on top of legislation, whether you're following different magazines or different publications in this space, just staying really ahead of the curve when it comes to any new legislation that's coming down the pipe, especially these days with all the PBM legislation. There's litigation happening on fiduciary liability, and just really being at the forefront so that you can educate and inform and empower employers to utilize that to their benefit.
Yeah, that's great advice. You never want to get in a room with the client or potential client and have them ask you something that you're not even aware of. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's great. Um, a lot of really valuable courses and opportunities that you just mentioned, and it's obvious why you're kind of excelling through this first part of your career. Um, so in your LinkedIn profile, you talk about being a fiduciary first benefits broker, right? Um, in plain English, explain that to the audience, to anyone that's listening, and what does that mean that you do differently from a lot of brokers?
Yeah, so being a fiduciary benefits advisor basically boils down to following the ERISA fiduciary tenets, which is being prudent with every dollar spent out of an employee's paycheck, following plan documents, making decisions and giving advice that's solely in the best interest of the plan sponsor and the plan participant, and then avoiding any conflicts of interest that you can. So, by being a fiduciary benefits advisor, I get to position myself not on the carrier side because the carrier for me and being a fiduciary advisor is not who is paying my paycheck. I sit on the side with my employers and we work on a fee basis that's navigated and negotiated one-on-one between my client and myself.
Mhm.
So I sit with my client to align their benefits plans in accordance to their goals with values and growth, all of that kind of bundled into one, rather than working toward carrier commissions or being incentivized to place X amount of dollars with X carrier in order to hit the end of the year bonus or get to go on the trip. I solely am always focused on how we can improve the health and financial outcomes of my clients and their plan participants.
That's great. That's what brokers should be, right?
Well, and I think
Um,
so many people think that that's what a broker is. Like when you think about it, that's what they should be doing. And it's just not the expectation or the standard in the industry just yet.
yeah, that's a great way to position that. Okay, so you mentioned in a post that I read that you're an avid reader. I think you said that you read about a book a week or 48 books a year, so not quite a book a week, and that they span kind of all the self help, the fun, the spiritual.
Mhm.
I want to ask you for two book recommendations. First,
Okay.
give me a book that you think every broker should read.
I think every broker should read probably A Salesperson's Guide to Building a Business, which was written by Kevin Trokey and Wendy Kniep. They've actually founded another great learning opportunity, which is Q4 Intelligence, that I think everybody should look into. I was fortunate to be a part of a lot of their groups, but their book really kind of positions the fact that so often selling is viewed as like convincing someone to buy something. And instead, a salesperson should really be looking at how can you educate and empower someone to make better buying decisions.
Very, very interesting. I have not read that book. Well, I listen to a lot of books. I don't read a lot of books. I listen to them.
Hey, it's
Um,
the same.
and then now just one book that you think everyone in general should read, whether that's fun, spiritual, kind of your top choice. If you had to just make a blanket recommendation to the general population.
Yeah, the book I give everyone for gifts, for example, is like the One Thing, which was written by Gary Keller.
Mhm.
Um, it'll just change the way that you view priorities, how you show up in the world, and what you should be focused on at the end of the day.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah.
Anyone that hasn't should read that. I agree. Um, Okay. So one of the things that's kind of helping you bridge this gap, getting from starting the career to excelling in your career is social media. And because you're young, that's something that's kind of second nature for you. Um, how do you use that to your advantage? And you actually made a post, it was a while ago, but it was talking about how you lay out your social media strategy. Sometimes you plan ahead. Um, I'd love for you to go really in depth here and get granular with people because I think a lot of people want to be more active on LinkedIn and social platforms, but they have a hard time coming up with new content, figuring out when and what they're going to post. So, yeah, walk us through what that looks like in a day for, or in if you do it by month or week or however for you, Talia.
Yeah, I do think I have the privilege of I was in like middle school and high school when a lot of the social media apps started getting really super popular. So I did get to see them like evolve from being very generic to now the modern way that everybody communicates.
Mhm.
And specifically when we're talking about utilizing social media to advance like a business practice, I think where a lot of people get stuck is feeling like they have to be an expert before they can have an opinion and feeling as though nobody's going to read it or nobody's going to support it. And for me, that was even the case. And I became super consistent on LinkedIn about 6 months ago. I'd previously had a mentor tell me, you're never going to close business posting on LinkedIn or TikTok. That's not the way that you're going to build relationships and connections. And throughout kind of learning, I just started posting anything. I was like, I'm just going to show up today. And I'm going to post whatever comes to mind. And it started out, I think I was doing like 2 or 3 times a week, and then I began trying to strive for once a week. So now I sit down, take about an hour and a half, and I work out my LinkedIn posts probably for the next week, week and a half, kind of depending on what my schedule looks like the following week. And when it comes to ideas, I felt the same way. I was like, man, you have to have a new idea every day. You can't repeat the same thing that you said last week. Got to keep it new. You got to keep it fun. You got to keep it refreshed. And there's like some truth to that. But I think if you have an opinion on something, it's worth sharing that opinion. Your thoughts are
Mhm.
valuable. Even if you're asking a question, if you're curious about something, just putting it out there and creating a space for others to also engage back with you. I actually have a paper calendar next to my computer here on my desk. And anytime I have a conversation with an employer where something really sticks out to me, I just write it down. Or if I have a conversation with another broker, or I see a vendor contract, or I get a cold email, or I'm scrolling on Reddit, whatever I see, I'll just like quickly write it down, make a quick note. And then when I go back, I usually have a list of like 15 to 20 things that have just happened in the last 7 days that I can post about for the next 7 days.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the batching of content because it gives me the opportunity to like show up a little bit more authentically the rest of the week. So I take an hour, hour and a half, sit down, batch out all my posts, schedule them to post for later. And then the rest of the week I can show up and engage with other people on LinkedIn, read what they're doing, read news
Mhm.
articles, mindfully comment, a lot of things like that. But I think the biggest thing people just need to do is start. That was the
Yeah.
best advice I was given anyway, is just start.
Yeah. You're the second person that posts pretty regularly that said they're just taking notes anytime that a client has a question and anytime that someone asks a thought provoking question on LinkedIn and that you have an opinion about it. And I like the batching of content. A lot of times
Hmm.
we have to like people will be like, "Oh, that's fake," and it's not. If it's things that people have really had questions about and people really need answered, or you have a strong opinion about,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter if it posts 4 days from now, or unless your opinion changes in that 4 days. But yeah,
You can
it's
always edit it. That's
yeah,
okay.
of course. So that's great advice. You know, sitting down, carving out time, putting that thought together. If you don't know how to schedule posts on LinkedIn, definitely search a YouTube video about how to do it. It's pretty
Yeah.
easy. And then scheduling those out. So I love that. And tell us what has social media done personally for your book of business?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have made fantastic connections with all kinds of people. I have referral partners that found me on LinkedIn. They were like, man, really love your fiduciary message. And I would love to see if there's, clients that I have. A lot of times it's like a CPA or a 401k advisor, people working parallel to the health space. And they'll reach out and they'll be like, I would love to learn more about your mission. And I've had a couple people go directly to my LinkedIn profile, like prospects, and book a meeting. And I had a prospect in my inbox the other day who was like, hey, my current broker just told me X, Y, and Z, and I'd love to get your take on it and love to get your opinion. So it definitely opens a lot of doors. I definitely think too, especially if you are newer, getting started, younger in the industry, it helps build a lot of credibility that you're out here talking about the thing that you do every day and clearly showing that you're passionate, you're well informed, you're educated, and you have something to offer that may be a different opinion than somebody else. I always try to take the stance of being authentically me. So I'll be a little quippy sometimes. I'll say something that could be considered a hot take, but I think it's really just important to, again, continue to show up, and people will find you. I got this opportunity from LinkedIn, for example. So you get asked to be on podcasts, you get asked to write articles for magazines. I've built a really cool community of people also in the industry that we can bounce ideas off of each other. I have standing calls with some of these people every month so we can hold each other accountable. I think all of that is just as valuable in building your business.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. If you look at LinkedIn as, oh, I made 7 posts and I have no leads from it yet, so I'm not going to do it anymore.
Yeah,
You're using it wrong. You have to look at it as an ecosystem that can drive all the other parts of your business, and eventually will turn into leads, right? But
absolutely.
not at the beginning, not your first couple posts, unless you're really lucky. Um, so one of
Yeah.
your posts I thought was really great, because I've had the same inner dialogue with myself. Uh, you said, sometimes I open a post and think, wow, Talia, great take. Then
Yeah.
it gets 60 impressions. Other times, something I didn't think anyone would read hits 100,000 views. So walk us through that. What have you learned about detaching your ego from the metrics that are showing up on LinkedIn? Because I've had the same thing where I'm like, this is going to be my best post ever, and I get like one comment on.
Yeah.
So yeah, walk us through that.
I would say for me, it's always the posts that I feel like I put the most effort into. I really thought about it. I rewrote it 15 times, maybe spent 20 minutes on one post, and it genuinely gets like 60 impressions and maybe a comment. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, well, that didn't resonate. I wonder why. And I think detaching yourself is like a really good way to put it, because you do have to kind of remove like the ego that gets driven in social media.
Mhm.
I had a post where I was literally scrolling on Reddit, and I found the R health insurance subreddit, and I was like, "Oh, let me just take a look, see what people are saying." Everybody was talking about how my premiums are going up by 30%. My employer made our deductible $9,000. Now our max out of pocket is 21,000. Just like an aura of serious frustration. So I just took a couple of screenshots, and I was like, "Man, this isn't normal. Like, this is not how this conversation should be happening, and there are things we can do about them, and if you're not looking at the ways we can improve the system, you're failing as a broker, essentially. Like, that is your job." And that post, I was just mad. I was just heated, and I put it out there really quick. It wasn't a scheduled post. It just came out. Went to sleep that night, woke up the next morning with like 105,000 views and a comment from Mark Cuban of all people. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the one. Like, that's the one that went somewhere.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I think I really kind of realized, like, well, I wouldn't walk into like a conference and speak to 1,000 people one day and then walk into the same conference in a different session and only see 60 people there and be like, well, guess I'm not presenting today. And I think
Mhm.
that LinkedIn is kind of the same thing. Like, even if it is only 60 people, one of those 60 people could be your new best client, or they could be your new best friend. It could be somebody who's really resonating and learning from that. So stop worrying about whether 60 people saw it, 600 or 600,000 saw it. Just,
Yeah.
again, show up and learn and do better tomorrow if you can.
Yeah. That's really an interesting way to look at it, as
Mhm.
a presenter, right? Are you going to not deliver your presentation because the room's not as full as other
Right.
times? And I think you've got to look at your LinkedIn profile and what you do on LinkedIn as a full picture of you, right? And
Yeah.
in the 60, like you said, it could be the most important person that's ever read your message, but as long as your message stays true to you, doesn't matter which post gets seen 100,000 times, because
Mhm.
it's giving the right message, right? So that's great advice.
Definitely.
Okay, so you mentioned, as a fiduciary first broker, you're partnering with the businesses. I've heard you talk about how HR is the one that gets all of the feedback from
Mhm.
employees, from the finance team. They get feedback from both sides,
Yeah.
and oftentimes are expected to clean up the messes that they didn't create, right?
Right.
Where they were forced to do something one way because had to meet budget. They didn't necessarily want to create what they have to clean up. Um, for brokers listening, how can they better partner with HR instead of trying to bypass them to who might be the decision maker, the CFO, or the head of finance?
I think that the best thing brokers can do with HR is listen to HR. HR, like you mentioned, I mean, they are this in between. They have direct line to CFOs, CEOs, some additional decision makers, but they're also like the people. So they are the ones interacting with employees on the daily basis. They know who's getting cancer treatment, who's got a specialist they have to see that's 45 minutes away. They know these integral parts and pieces of their members, and that's who, as brokers, we are, especially as a fiduciary broker, that's who I'm building these programs for. So without having that immeasurably valuable insight, I cannot effectively improve the financial outcomes or health outcomes of a group of people if I don't know anything about it. And I think a lot of brokers do get stuck worrying like, oh, it's a budget thing, it's always going to be a budget thing. Sometimes money is not the object, sometimes it is network access.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is response time of support for HR. Sometimes HR needs additional help and services that are not being currently provided. So if you're looking at only like your insurance solutions and only talking about which network we're going to go with, what TPA we're going to go with, and each one costs this, this, and this, you're missing like the whole human side of healthcare. And I think HR is like the best place to start with that. If you ask questions, you listen, you take that insight, and then use that to actually build a program that is working for the people you're designing it to serve. Everyone wins there. The employer is usually going to win. HR is going to win with less admin work. The employees are going to win by having better financial and health outcomes.
Yeah, that's a great point. When you can help people help their people, that's kind of a weird sentence, but you'll get a lot of loyalty,
Yeah.
and you're going to get the right plan in place, right? You're
Yeah.
going to get a plan that drives retention out of business, that hopefully, if it's done correctly and intelligently, is the most affordable for all parties involved. But yeah,
Absolutely.
that's great advice, is to not bypass HR in trying to get a decision made. Okay, one, I saw you talk about wellness programs, right? You said wellness programs are fun, but they are not a hardcore strategy.
Yeah.
So unpack that for us. What's the difference between checking the wellness box and actually changing outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want any of the wellness vendors that may be listening to come for me for this one. I do stand by it because wellness programs are super fun. People really like them. And the fact that people appreciate them obviously holds a significant amount of value. But when we think about a true healthcare financing strategy or a care navigation strategy, people wearing a Fitbit and walking 5,000 steps a day is not going to be what lowers the cost of a specialty medication. It's not going to be what reduces your annual premium increases from 15% to 7%, saving everybody money. What I always like to focus on first is like, what are the measurable things that we can track and change? So again, carrot sticks, great if that's what you're putting in your cafeteria, but I mean, a wellness program can cost anywhere from free to, I've seen programs up to $2,500 per employee per year. But the cost associated with that versus the benefit of, say, removing all mental health barriers. So there's no copays, no, co-insurance, not a whole bunch of care navigation and step therapies that have to happen. That has a measurable outcome of reducing absenteeism, improving overall health and well-being, and decreasing, the need for more serious intervention with a lot of different mental and behavioral health concerns. And so if you look at that, you're going to build a very healthy, very happy population of people who appreciate the benefits that they're being offered because of the value that they've added to their lives versus, some of the wellness programs that, again, like everybody gets a $500 gift card for completing this month's challenge. Now, I do believe like if you have gone back and started building your health program from the ground up, you looked at your fiduciary PBMs, you've considered direct primary care or direct contracts with centers of excellence, and you've really looked at a lot of those strategic things, and you've built a program where you do have really low barriers and cost barriers for your employees and for the plan sponsor, by all means, any of the money that you've saved, let's go ahead and reinvest that into a great wellness program that everybody loves, get free gym memberships, all of that good stuff. But I just don't think that that's going to be the thing that moves the needle in the way of changing healthcare as a whole.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So to reframe that, it shouldn't be your first priority. It should be a priority. They're great.
Yeah.
They can help people be healthier and make healthier choices.
Yeah.
But there are other ways to make sure that you're reducing costs, that you're making access to care more easy for your employees. And those are the strategies you would say are the more hardcore strategies to help reduce your costs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also a lot of value in utilizing services that are already a part of the benefits you're currently offering. So often we see EAPs that have absolutely no participation or utilization, or we see smoker cessation programs that have no participation and no utilization. So before adding another layer, I just think it's important to kind of break down back to the fundamentals, change that process, and then we can start building more and more things on top of it.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, we're running up to time. Usually we do these for about 30 to 40 minutes, just depending on how long the questions go. The question that I like to ask everyone um, is: you're newer in this space. What has you most excited about being in this space going into 2026 and also over the next decade? You're going to be here for a while.
Yeah, I am super excited about the future of employee benefits. I think there is a lot of great conversations that are being started. I think there's a lot of really big voices in the industry who are finally getting, I guess, like the spotlight that they've really deserved because they've been saying this. That's the thing too. It's like a lot of these people have been saying it, but now they're finally being heard. And there's new legislation coming out that's going to hold vendors accountable. Employers are feeling more empowered to take back control of their health plan spend, holding their brokers and vendor partners more accountable to the services that they receive. I think that being a fiduciary benefits advisor is the future of this industry, and the brokers who start adopting that model and really focus on like the transparency and the data are going to go a lot further in this industry. And I would not be surprised if the next 10 to 15 years, the entire space looks completely opposite what it does right now. And I'm stoked that I get to be a part of that and ideally be one of the people that is helping drive that change moving forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're not the first person that's said similar things to the space looking completely different in 10 to 15 years. That goes back to the answer that you gave on staying on the forefront of all the
Absolutely.
legislation and the news that's going on. So, Talia, I really appreciate your time. This has been really, really helpful for anyone that's just starting out or anyone that's been in this for a long time. There's a lot of value in this episode. So I appreciate you taking some time with us.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Adam. This has been super fun. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime.
Love it.
Um, maybe a couple of years from now when you're like big shot in the industry, we'll do it again.
I'm holding you to that. I'm
Yeah,
holding you to that.
sounds great. Well, thank you for being here, everyone. Thank you for watching. This has been another episode of Benefits Broker Boost. Be better tomorrow than you were today, and we'll hopefully see you next time.